I know some very successful architects in my town who are also very well connected, right? Which is their own kind of social network that is not relying on the internet to do, who are super busy. And I don't think that it's a whole lot different. That the difference really is going to be in what kind of information do you want out there about you? And to me, it's about how I think and how I approach things and how I can fix that problem that the drafting service did, or come to me when they've screwed it up and you want it done right. And not to like toot your own horn, but you are a professional, and that this is what you've gone to school for. This is what you do every single day, and you solve these problems. And I think it's a huge opportunity that is not going to be a negative draw on your business to have that kind of information out there.
Welcome to ArchiSpeak, a podcast about all things architecture. My name is Neil Pan. Join me and my co-hosts, Evan Troxel and Cormac Phelan, every other week as we explore what it is like to work in the profession of architecture. Have you ever worked with an architect? Have you ever wanted to be an architect? Maybe you're in school and you don't know what you're getting yourself into. Or perhaps you know exactly what it is like as you've been working in the profession for a long time, and you know that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Or maybe, just maybe, you're planning on changing the world. Join us as we have a casual conversation about all things architecture. It's time for some ArchiSpeak. Welcome to episode 82 of the ArchiSpeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
I'm Cormac Phelan.
This episode of ArchiSpeak is sponsored by ArchCat. We're also sponsored by Roundhouse PM. We'll talk more about each of them later in the show. But first up, we have some friends of the show to announce.
This week, we've got a brand new friend of the show. It's Barbara Brem from Texas, and she's a landscape architect who just started listening to the show because her son wants to study architecture when he graduates high school, it sounds like. So very cool. Thank you, Barbara, for becoming a friend of the show. And if you would like to become a friend of the show and get your name read on the air and help make the show possible, you can do that at archispeakpodcast.com/donate.
So guys, I want to get started this week with a question. And that question is, do architects really need a website? And let me kind of give a little bit of backstory here. Around where I live, I've got a couple of colleagues, each have their own small firm, and neither one of them have a website. And yet they're really crazy busy. And they've been very, relatively successful, for a small firm in a small, relatively small metropolitan area. They've done quite well for themselves. And there's a number of reasons we can kind of get into a little bit about this, but, why they've been successful. But neither one of them has a website. And I guess kind of where I'm coming on this as well is that I do have a website. And what I find ironic about it is that a lot of the calls that I get, either, I usually always ask people, how did you find out about me? If they're cold calling me or not coming from, a reference from a prior project or something. And so usually the answer I get is, I just did a search, Livermore Architects, and it'd be in the city I live in, and your name popped up near the top, and I saw your website, or I was on House and searched for that area, and you popped up. And neither one of these guys are on House. They don't have their own websites, and they have other avenues, I guess, of finding or work finding them. So I'm just curious. What do you guys think about the question? Do you really need to have a website as an architect?
Let me ask a little bit more about their backstory. And
okay,
how old are they?
Oh, they're my age.
Oh, so they're old.
Older than dirt. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Well, no, the reason I ask is because it's kind of a two-part question or a two-part response. There, because architects existed without websites for a very long time. It was word of mouth, business cards, socializing, meeting and greeting and stuff like that. And, that's how they got their jobs. And they still exist that way. We still do that. We still attend events where, we're pressing the flesh and talking to people and things like that. But this can also be a conversation about the future and how are architects going to get, drum up some publicity or put, like, say, a portfolio out there so that people who are just doing the drive-by selection can say, okay, I looked at Neil's, I looked at Evan's, they got really nice projects and stuff, but I kind of prefer what Neil is putting out there, so I'm going to, give him a call. Or maybe I'll give them both a call and just see who's going to be the cheapest. This could be a question of, our website's going to be a useful marketing tool for the future, because this is sort of, I've always looked at websites as a digital business card. It's just like, here, check out my work on, neopan.com. So I don't know, that's just a thought. Is like, there's like the old school way of doing things, and then is the website part of this untapped new school thing?
I view a website as way more than a portfolio, too, because, for instance, I would set up a website if I had my own architecture firm, no doubt about it, because I want people to know how I think, and I also want them to know that I am not the cheapest. Because if you're setting up a website so that, like you said, Cormac, if it's like the worst case scenario, which is how I would label it, is I'm going to look up people and give them a call on who's the cheapest. Like, if my website can show the value that I give them, and that I don't have to worry about somebody like that calling me and wasting my time. Because, Neil, I think that this is something that happens often, right? This is something you complain about.
Yeah.
Because it's a very real thing. And you're using valuable time to talk to these people who have no intention of using you.
Well, or they're, I understand what you're saying. The intention may be, and this often happens too, is that you receive a phone call, and they may have every intention of possibly using you, but most likely, or very often I find, is that they have no clue about how to proceed. And so most of the question is, I want to add this or do this or remodel the X, and I don't know how to do this. I think I need an architect.
Yeah.
And sometimes the answer is actually, no, you don't. And I'm very upfront with people, and I'll tell them that. It's like, oh, you just want to remodel your kitchen. You're not moving walls around, just maybe cabinetry or something. You don't need me. You don't need to pay me to do that. I'd be more than happy to do that for you. But here's a way. The way I see it is as I'm trying to provide a service. And sometimes that service is, you don't need to spend money on me. And here's a way you can get what you want done in a cost-effective manner that may not include me. And I'm okay with that because I don't want to do a project for somebody that is going to feel like, oh, I wasted money. I didn't need that guy, or I didn't need that architect. But I'm happy to provide the service if they do really need me.
But this is where you really could add a lot of extra value, don't you? Instead of starting the conversation off by, and we're totally going down the rabbit hole here, but
right.
You're starting the conversation off saying, well, you don't really need me for this, but I'd be happy to do it. Instead, you could be saying, I designed the best effing kitchens you've ever seen. Like, let's talk about this. And this is an exciting project. I mean, those
Right.
are two completely different takes on the same phone call.
Yeah, that's true, actually. And I mean, that is a great take. And one, maybe I need to employ more, honestly. But I think oftentimes when I do get those calls, they're looking for an explanation. How do I do this? And what services do you provide? And, yeah.
Well, I was going to say that's a good opportunity for the website to do a little bit of the legwork for you.
Exactly.
Talk, put on there, the process. And we've got plenty of friends, and I was just actually looking at Marika McKeel's website, and so she talks about the process, about hiring an architect and things like that, or when to use an architect and when not to. So she's really using her website as kind of a way to kind of break the ice before the ice has even been served, kind of thing. And I like that opportunity to do the conversation through the website.
Yeah, it's a little bit of education. You kind of show ahead of time that you know what you're talking about, and that you're throwing out a bunch of ideas. It could go this direction. It could go this direction. It could go this direction. I'm here to help you solve which direction you want to go.
Right.
But here are the things that we think about. And to me, that's where I kind of started that whole little segment there was it is your personal platform, and everybody should have their own personal platform. If you're interested in finding clients or having them find you that think like you do, so that you're not wasting your time on the ones that don't. And I really, like, to my soul, believe that you have to have your own platform and not rely on somebody else's, like Houzz or Facebook or whatever it is that you want to put your stuff on. Because seriously, like, you are what they are selling, and you cannot just completely rely on them. Now, it totally makes sense to have a presence on those, and I know that lots of architects also get work through those, but you can't rely on them, especially when they're selling you. I mean, they're making money off of you doing that, and you have no guarantee that they're going to stay around. There's lots of examples of that really biting people in the butt. So that's just another way to think about it, is provide your own platform that shows how you think, that's your voice consistently, and I think that will pay dividends in the end.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going to echo what Evan said. I mean, you're shaping your own narrative. You're starting the conversation off on what you want to talk about, even before you even have the conversation with them, the actual face-to-face conversation with them. They sort of know where Neil's coming from. And, it's not just a snapshot or a portfolio thing, but it's really kind of, if, hiring an architect's a pretty serious thing. I mean, it's not,
it's probably the most money someone is ever going to spend on anything.
Exactly. So really, you want this to be not just a business card of like, okay, here's a pretty picture of what I can do, but here's what it's like working with me. Let's step into the soul of Neil.
Oh, that's a dark place. I don't know if I want to go there. I will say this, and I don't know if this has been for good or for bad. Not long ago, I did put a services tab on my website that sort of explains the process that you would typically go through, that an architect typically goes through. I probably need to expand that a little more to break it down to help some of the more residential clients to understand the process that not only that I will go through, but that they will go through, to kind of expand that to get to what you're talking about, Evan. To kind of maybe not necessarily weed out, but just to give people some, to kind of make that initial conversation a little bit less educational, because some of that information is already provided. But after I added that services along there, there's no fee particularly identified, but there is some percentages of cost of construction that break down into the different phases. And I've noticed I've received fewer calls once I put that up there. So maybe some of the people that wouldn't hire me anyway because they want something for $500, they want their blueprints for $500, and I can't work like that, so I can't make a living at that. So maybe some of those people are seeing that and they go, oh, wow, well, this is going to cost me, X amount of money. And wow, he's going to charge how much percentage wise? And so maybe they go away and they don't call me, and that's okay. But it's interesting. And I love what you guys are saying, because I think that it really sort of gets to the question I have about, do you really need a website? Because I think what you guys are both saying are reasons for having a website. I do find it interesting that I think there's other ways that people have work find them. I know one of them receives a lot of work from people he knows and through his church. Another one had some past clients at the firm he used to work for that have decided to move over and work with him, and then that's kind of grown organically from there. So I think there's other ways that you can get work. So
honestly, I don't think you have to have a website, but I think if you are, it depends. I liked Cormac's first question, how old are you? Because that is a pretty good indicator. And I know some very successful architects in my town who are also very well connected, right? Which is their own kind of social network that is not relying on the internet to do, who are super busy. And I don't think that it's a whole lot different. That the difference really is going to be in what kind of information do you want out there about you? And to me, it's about how I think and how I approach things and how I can fix that problem that the drafting service did, or come to me when they've screwed it up and you want it done right. And not to like toot your own horn, but you are a professional, and that this is what you've gone to school for. This is what you do every single day, and you solve these problems. And I think it's a huge opportunity that is not going to be a negative draw on your business to have that kind of information out there. Whereas somebody who is just relying on word of mouth, I mean, that's all they have. And it is very easy. I mean, this is kind of like the Yelp version of the real world. If one person says something bad about you to a potential client, that client will not call you.
Right.
And so if you're going to put all of your eggs into that basket, it might be good to have something else out there that shows all of the things you are capable of, and it shows your track record.
I mean, everybody puts out there, the billboard ad or the park bench, ad type stuff to kind of like be an introductory thing. But this really is a good, useful tool to let people know more than just the little extra. Let you kind of delve a little bit deeper into what services and stuff you can bring.
Yeah, agree.
Speaking of services you can bring, what about a sponsor break?
Absolutely. How about we talk a little bit about ARCAT? So we're all pretty busy, and sometimes we feel we could use another hand to help out. I know I do. Would you like somebody to help you out, maybe drawing some CAD details for you? How about maybe creating some BIM objects for you? How about, I know, Cormac, you would like this, write specifications for you. I don't have to do that so often. But
how much would all of that cost if I were to have somebody else do that for me?
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, how about we have an assistant do this all for free? And that assistant is going to be ARCAT. ARCAT is the answer, and ARCAT has already done all of this for you. You can search the ARCAT libraries for CAD, BIM, specs, catalogs, videos, and more. All of this content created for you free of charge with no registration required. Stop registering on sites for content. Just come to ARCAT and find what you need. ARCAT has created a website devoted to you, the building professional, to find building product information fast and hassle-free. Check out ARCAT today at arcat.com. And thanks, ARCAT, for sponsoring this episode of ArcaSpeak. So, guys, we're branching off of this question about websites. I want to talk about the photos that are on the websites and who gets credit for them. And, I know, Cormac, you have a little bit of history on, maybe a project you worked on, and how you have some thoughts about, maybe using some of those photos, in your portfolio. But I mean, what do you put on your website? Especially, okay, from my example, being an architect, I've been doing this a while, but I've oftentimes worked, or most of my career, I've worked for other people. And sometimes that work in my past has been mostly production housing, not something that is going to necessarily appeal to the type of client that I'm trying to obtain now on my own. So I don't actually show any of that work. I possibly could, but I didn't really design it. I was the project manager on the project, or I just did the construction drawings for that, maybe when I was a job captain. So is that really something I want to show as my own work?
Well, there's also, just to take that just a skosh further, you've been working for somebody else. You feel like it's, time for you to branch out on your own. But all of the examples of work that you've ever done, that you have, that you would like to present to another client, as examples of your work, are through another firm. And so how do you represent that on your website, through, media where you're sitting down and you're talking to them? How do you do that without breaking any copyright rules or paying, giving, credit to where credit's due, or are you marketing somebody else's work, and then, does it come back and bite you that, it's like, here, I showed this work. Yeah, I did this work when I was at somebody else, but I didn't reference that somebody else. And this client finds out that it's not, I'm just going to use you as an example, just say it's not a Neil Pan job.
Right.
It's a Archispeak job. And it was when Neil was working at Archispeak, not, Neil Pan himself. And so how do you then go out and kind of market that work that you say, this is what I can do?
Well, I think
because that's a challenge that everybody's facing, especially when they're going out on their own for the first time. Yeah. How do you market yourself with material that, even though you worked on it, even though you designed it, even though you did all the production documents on it, it's technically not yours?
Yeah.
Well, usually in like a employee manual, I know that they have this in the office I work in. It says anything that you produce when you're working for them, on their dime, they own, right? And that's just when you sign for that employee manual, you're signing that you understand that. And so, yeah, you're talking about imagery that is produced during the process of the project. You're talking about photography after the fact. You're talking about the drawings that you worked on. And while I think it's kind of just a known thing in the industry that people use those, I think what we're doing is we're making a distinction here between using those to get a job, when you're potentially interviewing at another place, versus showing it on your website as part of your portfolio. Those, to me, are two very different things.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
And I'm more trying to, I guess, gather what your thoughts are on
I can tell
latter.
You if I'm talking to a client, they don't really care, or they may not know and or understand. Now, I'm dealing with a different sort of client than you might be when dealing with a school or a college or something like that, which I think is at a totally different level of of a client being concerned about you selling somebody else's work, or work that maybe from somebody else. But when I'm talking to a residential client, they're not really going to care or understand that maybe I produced this at another firm. So in a conversation like that, I wouldn't necessarily even bring it up, because it's just going to muddy the water of the conversation. It's like, oh well, here's some work I did, but technically I did this at another firm, but I did do the work. They're not going to care about that.
Well, of course they don't care. I mean, but what you have to do is protect yourself if they do care.
Well, absolutely. But so I think if you're going to show some imagery on your website, I think you need to just like actually, in some cases, I do credit the photographer that took the photos of my own projects. But if I was going to show projects that I worked on for photography of projects I might have worked on, I would certainly say work performed at this firm, or give some sort of credit to where that work was produced. If it wasn't produced at, in this example, at Neil A. Pan Architect, right?
You want to do the same thing that you would expect of your own work, right? Where you are a professional and you own the copyright on your drawings. And if somebody else were to use those, what would you want to do about it? I mean, that's kind of the position you have to take with it as far as anybody else goes as well. And honestly, like, if I were to go somewhere else and show images that I've made from the company that I've worked on, I really need to own those images for me to show them as mine.
Right.
And you definitely can a lot of times work out that deal with the photographer who made the images, because it's a really weird thing, right? Where we design the building, the contractor builds the building, the photographer photographs it. Who owns the images? Well, depending on the license agreement, typically it's the photographer. They are the professionals who put all of the science together to get that image, right?
Yeah, and technically their licensing agreement is not here. You've bought them, now you own them outright.
Well, it depends. Yeah,
you've bought them, and you're technically
licensing them.
Yeah, you're licensing them.
And so yeah, that might be that might be typical. It might not be. I mean, I have a photographer who I use all the time, and this is just one of the reasons I like to use him. Let alone he's my friend, and I like to catch up when he shoots my projects. But he doesn't have that license agreement. He is use it however you want. They're your images. after, because he doesn't want to deal with all that licensing. And there are lots of other photographers who absolutely don't think that way. They own the images, and I have some of these that I have copies of on a project that I worked on, and that photographer is very much like, you will pay me to use these images in this specific way. And that's the license agreement that we have with him. And so it really depends on that license. And you're a professional, and you expect the courtesy of people obeying your copyrights on your designs. You should honestly honor that for them as well, and not just throw it out there and say, well, I'm not really hurting anybody. I mean, really, you need to honor those contracts that you have with those people.
Right.
So you could go to the photographer who photographed the building that you worked on, and you could say, I would like to buy a license of these images off of you. How much is that going to cost? And then you can negotiate that, right? So that you can use them completely legally. Or you could go to the building and photograph it yourself. Now, you're probably not going to get the same great images that photographer got, or you could hire a photographer to go out and reshoot it if you can work out a deal with the owner of the building again. So it's complicated, right? There's so many different things going on here, but really on your website, you should be showing images that you own only, if you really want to stay out of any trouble.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of I'm trying to bridge the gap here between what I was thinking, the intent of how does one go about marketing it? And I guess that's the point, is that I understand owning the images, and showing those images, but if the actual work itself, so I guess what I'm trying to get at is how do we market ourselves, especially as a new guy out there on the street trying to show everybody what he can do. But, again, he doesn't have a list of projects that's Neopan specific. It's Neopan as Archispeak, kind of thing. And so how does he go out there and actually market himself that way? And, and I guess it's, maybe this is just a tangent that's really not worth exploring, but it's kind of rough. I mean, because we do have a lot of listeners who, go out on their own, or are a small business that is just a 1-man, 2-man shop, that they're guys that used to work together in a bigger firm. Now they went out on their own and they're doing their own thing. And how do they, if they're marketing for commercial or marketing for residential or whatever, how do they go about marketing themselves with examples from somebody else's firm? Or do they?
Honestly, I don't think you do. I think you try to figure out any way you can to build your portfolio. And you can talk about your experience, because as architects, we are enamored with the image. And so that's all we're really talking about here. But I don't think that that's what people are really necessarily shopping for.
Yeah, so let me give you an example of why I was thinking about this in this particular way. Is I have a friend of mine who owns a firm that I used to work for down in Florida, and he was going after a project, and another firm was going after a project, and he was throwing up examples of work that he's done, that particular firm has done, and representing it as his work, because it legitimately is his work. And then the competing firm that subsequently got the project was putting up work that had been done by either an associate architect or a different architect of record, that they did work on the project, but they didn't actually do the work. So, and so they got the job based off of representing themselves as, they basically just signed and sealed some documents or something, but never really did the So that's kind of I know that's a completely different, because once you sign and seal it, don't you sort of take ownership?
Well, I guess my question would be...
Sorry, that's a total tangent there. I apologize.
What does this have to do with the topic?
Who cares? It's our show.
Yeah.
We want. I guess the question I would have is, and this may or may not be directly going off your example, but let's say that a partner in a firm, that work was done, a job was done at that firm. That particular principal may have been tangentially involved with it a little bit, but maybe didn't do the bulk of the work. And then now that firm splits up. And I guess the question is, who then owns, I mean, if the work was done for that firm, can any one of those principals, let's assume there's three, can any one of those principals lay claim to that project?
The entity owns it.
That is a
The entity owns it, but the entity doesn't exist anymore. So who can say they did the project, or who could use that project in future marketing? I guess is the question I'm asking.
So this kind of ties into another tangent that I was thinking about was, well, what happens when one firm buys another, right? They basically take over ownership of all of those projects, even though they didn't technically do them, right? They've basically bought the talent, potentially, maybe not, that did those. And so then they get to use those, even though they never did the work. So let's say my firm buys another firm who did a courthouse somewhere. Now I own the rights to show that in my portfolio as a project that we're not only did, but are capable of doing. Even if the people who worked for that firm do not work for it anymore. And this happens all the time.
Wow, that seems so timely.
It's crazy, right? And so you're what's weird about this is like we're struggling with what images can I put on my website, and the firm out there who you used to work for says no, you can't use our images, but they basically do the same thing. And I know it's a little different, but there's so many subtleties in these arguments here that it's like you want to run it all through your lawyer first, and then you got to pay the lawyer to tell you. It's a muddy business, the whole copyright thing.
It is, because I mean, it even goes down to, and this is an even further down the rabbit hole kind of example, but it was just at pre-construction meeting, a pre-bid meeting. And a lot of the contractors were asking about, when can we get the CAD drawings, or when can we get your Revit model and things like that. And I don't want to open up this conversational can of worms, but the engineers are looking at me like, well, we don't give that out because, it's copyright. And then if you read further into, like, say, certain contracts with certain clients, especially larger, like, private institutions or things like that, that says that any work that you do for us, it's solely owned by us. So the copyright thing is just it takes so much out of you, because you're like, I sweat, my blood, sweat, and tears went into this particular project, and it's my love, my creation. I know more about this project than anybody else, and it's not mine.
And not only that, but you could decide to say, yeah, we give that away for free, right? That is yours. And so a lot of contracts probably start out with, we maintain ownership, and then the client crosses that part out and says, nope, I do. And then we say, okay.
Thank you.
Because we want the job. We would like the job. Thank you.
Yeah.
Isn't that always the way that works? Do you want the
not
job
always,
or not?
but yeah, you're right. A lot of times it does.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's get into another quick sponsor break here. This one about Roundhouse PM. We have a few questions first. So are you constantly struggling to stay on top of your projects? How about constantly apologizing for past due submittals or RFIs? Cormac?
Yes.
No, never.
No, because you stay up till like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, that's true.
To every one of them. So are you tired of not having the latest drawings or pertinent information at your fingertips the moment you need them at the office or the job site?
Well, that's a definite yes.
Yeah. The founders of Roundhouse have certainly felt this way as well. After researching in vain for the perfect software solution, they set off to create their best project management software that would help them stay on top of their growing practice. After years of collaboration with leading software developers and extensively used by their own firm, this cloud-based solution is now available to everyone. Regardless of the size of your firm, you too can benefit from this perfect merging of real-world practice, experience, and cutting-edge project collaboration that Roundhouse PM offers, all at the very affordable price. On average, Roundhouse PM ends up only costing around $25 per project per month. Visit roundhousepm.com/Archispeak. That's roundhousepm.com/Archispeak roundhouse.com/Archispeak and see for yourself everything Roundhouse PM can do for you. And while you're there, take the free test drive using a sample data project to experience firsthand how all it has to offer. That again is roundhousepm.com/Archispeak. And as we say, get into the Roundhouse. And thanks Roundhouse PM for sponsoring this episode of Archispeak.
Let me just say, $25 per project per month is so little for peace of mind. I mean, that's it. And that's not part of the read. And this is just part of a side plug of like, we met these guys. They're a friend of the show. They're good people that have struggled with the exact same things that we've struggled with on every project. And
the difference is they rolled their own solution.
Exactly. And they're just like, cool. You know what? There's so many things out there that just kind of clutter and people aren't fully understanding what architects deal with on a daily basis. We do because that's what we are. And, you know, kind of said, what's the best of everything? Let me put it together in one stop that we could really kind of solve this problem that we have. And, you know, we always talk about the work smarter, not harder. I mean, that's what they did. They created a work smarter.
Well, and the way I see it is they were their own client, right? It's kind of like what we did. We wish that there was a show when we were in school that talked about how working in the profession of architecture was. And so we created this show and we talk about that. And that's exactly what they did. They had this need. They built a tool because of awesome internet stuff. And then they made it available to everybody else.
Bet they got a website that you can find out all the information about it. Back to our topic.
Yes, they do have a website, roundhousepm.com/Archispeak. But yeah, I think in their case, they need a website, right? Otherwise, a cloud-based solution without a website is not going to work very well.
Well, let's talk about cloud-based solutions as far as websites. So a lot of people out there will say, well, you know, I don't need my own website. I can do it all on Houzz, or I can do it all on whatever. There's lots of different solutions out there. I think Houzz is probably one of the more popular ones that are specific
About Me and all these other ones.
Yeah. So what about those? I mean, do you guys think that it's a safe place to keep all your stuff? I mean, what do you think?
Here's my take on it. I think that I think you stated it really well, Evan, earlier. You need to have your own place that is your own voice. That being said, I think having a presence on something like Facebook or Houzz, you have to go to where your potential clients are going to visit.
Like the widest possible audience.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a billion people that use Facebook every day, right? So, I mean, that's like 1/7 of the entire world's population. So if you want to get yourself in front of some eyeballs, you got to have a Facebook page, right? And that's today. I mean, 10 years ago, we might have been saying you got to have a MySpace page, or you have to have a channel on AOL or whatever they might have called those things back then. But it's so that may change over time. But right now, I think having a presence or something that a presence really on Facebook, you almost have to have. In my case, I do a lot more residential work. And so having a presence on Houzz is where clients go to.
So you are saying that when you ask if where they saw you, you're saying that people have said they saw you on Houzz.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That or I'll get emails directly from Houzz where people are like, oh, I saw you, because you can be contacted directly through the Houzz website. So, do I spend a lot of time curating that site? No. Maybe should I? But maybe. But I think, there's obviously a link right at the top of the page that goes directly to my website. So really, Houzz is a container for basically the same images that I have on my website. I throw up on Houzz, add a little bit of
Pinterest for architects
about it, which is this kind of duplicating what's already on my website, and it's there. And then I have a presence there. And I do the same thing on Facebook.
I guess my issue with this whole thing is because I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because I I could very easily have a presence on Houzz or whatever. I don't in this case, but I don't like the idea of somebody sitting in a cubicle in some other city choosing to, how my work is going to be presented as they see fit, which could change all the time. And I guess what I'm referring back to, Cormac, you mentioned this earlier before the show, was you had a bunch of stuff on a website that went away, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens at that point?
Yeah, I think it's very important to, you need to make sure that if you're creating content or something that is on, we'll use Houzz in this example, you need to make sure that that's not the only place. I guess what I just kind of answered your question a little bit in my explanation, Evan, is that Houzz is kind of a duplicate of what my own website is. I mean, as far as the imagery goes, I'm not creating separate content or separate imagery that's only available on Houzz, so that if Houzz goes away in a couple of years, I'm not losing anything. And so I think that's very important to keep in mind here. Where my website, as long as I keep paying the domain and paying for that, it'll go on forever.
That's expensive, right? A lot of architects.
It's not that expensive.
No, of course it's not. A lot of architects, though, use that excuse, right?
It's not expensive.
I don't want to pay the $5 or $8 a month when someone else will do it for free.
Even though it is, the old adage of you got to spend money to make money, it's like the least amount of money that you could spend to actually get your name out there.
Well, I mean, if $5 a month, I mean, if you're the architect who goes out and buys a cup of coffee every day, you've spent way more on coffee at your choice of coffee house than you would maintaining a domain and a website. I mean, you can do this very inexpensively.
There might be websites like that get a lot of eyeballs, but how do you stand out on those websites when your stuff looks the same as everybody else's stuff and people are scrolling through these pages at light speed and you get 5 seconds to make an impression?
Oh, that's tough.
Well, see, so that may be the value of a Houzz or whatever other thing, a Facebook page or something so you put up the flashy images and and people respond well to flashy images and you're like, ooh, I like what Neil's showing there. And then you click on it. And then hopefully what happens if you've caused them to stop and actually look, then maybe that's when the clickbait of there's Neil Pan's website. Let me click to Neil Pan. Let me go over to Neil Pan Architect and start looking at who he is, what he can do for me. I mean, that's kind of what I look at all of these.
Yeah, they're the calling card.
They should be the calling card to then get you back to a well-crafted, well-curated, Neil, webpage that kind of tells...
Hint, are you trying to tell me something?
You're almost there.
I guess the hard part to me is how do you stand out in a really noisy platform like that, right? Because it's all noise, and there's a lot of shit on those sites that is just terrible stuff. And so maybe it's a little bit even hard to compete with people who just put everything on their page, and they're just loading it up with a bunch of junk when you're curating it down to maybe some really choice pieces that you hope are going to get people over to your website. I mean, honestly, I think that a time better spent on those sites is providing value to people. And so you provide value, and then you get to ask for them to come to your website. And so if there are forums or if there are ways that you can provide your expertise and help people solve their problems for free, right? Just chime in. I think you're going to slowly build a reputation if people continue to see your name popping up all the time as far as providing good info. That helps build a good reputation online, which could then lead people back to your website. It doesn't all have to be on your website, I guess is what I'm saying. So if you really want to build a great online presence, you need to be providing value all over the internet, right? So there's lots of forums out there. There's lots of do-it-yourself stuff. There's lots of design critique kind of websites where you could be providing input to people and then hopefully leading them back to your website at some point.
All good points. I agree. That takes a lot of time and effort, and
It sure does.
And sometimes we don't have time to do that, or the desire either. So it's not something you have to do. But I do agree that if you do that, it will lead people to you.
Yeah, I guess it would be interesting to know from our listeners, so now's our turn to ask you guys is, what do you do? What have you found works well for you in your business? I mean, there's lots of architecture marketing courses out there that are going to tell you need to do all this stuff. I want to know real world examples of what has worked for you. So do you have a house account? Do you have a page that generates leads? Do you do it all on your own website? I mean, I'm not asking for a huge explanation. I just want to kind of get a pulse of what's working for people.
Yeah. And how do they do that? How do they tell us this, Evan?
Well, we've got a great feedback page on our website. You can use that if you head over to arcspeakpodcast.com if you just have a general comment. But if you have something specific to this episode to say regarding what you're using that's working well for you, just do it in the comments right on the episode page. And you can find that at arcaspeakpodcast.com/episodes/82. And if you sign up for the show notes, you will get links to everything that we've talked about in this episode. And you can do that at arcaspeakpodcast.com on just about every page there. You can sign up on the right-hand side for the show notes, and you'll get an email only when a new episode drops and no other time. So we totally respect your privacy, and we would love for you to sign up to get the show notes in your mailbox.
Absolutely. And you can also go to our Facebook page, too, and there's a link to find that at arcaspeak.com as well. So we do have a presence there. And we've been getting some good comments, by the way, so we really appreciate people participating. We've been posting some videos and some other things too there to kind of get some conversation going. So check that out as well.
All right, so does that wrap up this episode?
I think that wraps up this episode. Well, thanks, everyone, for listening, and make sure you stay subscribed.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
You have to walk it, you can start now, or you can hang your head in despair. It's the only road to take you there. They may tell you that you'll never recover, baby. I bet one thing or another about you. It's the only road to get you there. And if they don't know how to treat a lady, maybe you can teach them how to act. They could use a little bit of discipline and a hand on the backside, baby. Let's pretend we're doing the right thing. And while we're at it, have the opposite day. Some like to hug, some leave a bruise, some need to go. I'm ready for you. Hey, put your skates on. Come on together. Hey, hey, on. I took you up to your skates on. Great song, the real world. It manufactures glory for the feeling its fractures. Photos and truth like a tractor, a cracked actor, a mother of pearl. And if they don't know how to hold a woman, maybe you can put them back in their place. They could use a little bit of discipline and a hand across their face. Baby, let's pretend we're doing